with most respect and humility. Guess what? This is David Mackey, Shiny Side Out. Coming into you from Australia for Revolution Radio on revolution.radio. So it's really easy to remember. We're a tone to fresh, unfiltered ideas and conversations. You'll find us in the chat room where I'm actually at now. I'm shown as Narara. That's my name in the chat room. And you know what? Revolution.radio is a great place to also get your merchandise, your Freedom Slips and Revolution Radio merchandise. Do it right now, and subscribe. This is show number 574. It's a lot of shows so far. Weekly shows. That's a lot. 500 weeks. Wow. You can catch Dave and Mackie on air, online, and on your smart device. And if you wish to use a smart device, just download the right app. And Revolution Radio goes out on so many different apps, I can't even keep up anymore. But you'll find it somewhere. Studio A, that's where we are. The Premiere Studio. I'd like to say hello to Solaris. A great show. Hey, Flippy. Yes, that's a great image there with a tinfoil hat wearing person. I won't say who it is. Oh, and by the way, you can listen at home on a Grace Tabletop Digital Radio, by the way. Now, if you missed Solaris' show, don't worry about it. There's an archive. You can jump in there and grab it. The archives are free. But tonight, once again, great guest, awesome show, Solaris, David C. Collis, talking about consciousness. Yeah, now, Mackie and I have done a mind and body separation show. We spoke about what's different about both of them and how they don't kind of connect. They really don't. And why we suggested that's the case. So do have a look at that. I think it's mind and body problem. I think that's what we call it. Anyway, have a look. I can't even remember what show number it is. Now, it's, like I said, it's free to access the Revolution Radio archives. So just jump in there and do that. Donate any way you can to the station because that's really important. Whether you just simply buy merch or you become a Patreon, because that's the thing you can do now, which is really cool. Then I'll leave the rest up to you. Now, I'm broadcasting from an area of people, the traditional custodians of land where I live. This is the Darkinjung people area. And there's actually kindly on the freeway, when you enter this area, there's signage there on the freeway that says you are entering Darkinjung country. Well, that's where I broadcast from. And the Darkinjung country also includes Mount Yengo, and where Biami and his 3 sons came down and created humanity, according to the stories. And those father and 3 sons stories is shared around the planet. But this is the oldest continuously stable civilization of more than 80,000 years of continuous history. And it really doesn't look like there was a story that had contaminated it, whereas all the other ones through Northern Europe and Europe, for that matter, they all had some kind of cross-contamination, which is very interesting. And that the father and 3 sons story is consistent all the way across Northern Europe into Southern Europe, Western Europe. And you have to consider that while the stories are slightly different, the weapons were pretty much the same across Europe. You know, you have a trident and the others. And always one of them had a trident in each one of those histories going back in time. So very interesting that should be the case. I'm going to bring up the banks in a minute. The stories come up in the chat room, and you can join us in the chat room, and we prefer it, in fact, that you come into the chat room, chat to us on air, and if you really have a great point to make, we would bring you in to the station so we can talk to you on air if you're willing. You don't have to do that. It's not compulsory. And don't be afraid. You should never be afraid, because fear is not real. Danger is real, but fear isn't. Fear is your perception of a danger, imaginary or real. And fear can be debilitating. So don't fear. Have a plan that you have in your back pocket that you could use at any time. Now, that's not a material plan where you have to, excuse me, danger. So I'm just going to be, hang on, I'm just going to read this. In step 1, identify the danger. Oh, high danger. Number 2, do one of 3 things. If it's this, that's going to take you too long. Be prepared for a danger and practice what that should mean to you. And it doesn't mean harming others. And unless if you're, of course, you're being harmed by them or about to be harmed by them, then I'm not going to condone the violence. But if at the time that this is a court, in court, you'd be able to describe it in such a way that you weren't found guilty of violence in any way, shape, or form, then I would say you should at least make a consideration whether it's worthwhile. So I know in America, because I went to school in California, right? And there was this rule that was, I think you call it common law, right? It's common law rule that says if someone's coming at you with a pencil, you can't use a gun. If someone's coming at you with a knife, if you use open hand combat to disarm them, then whatever happens to the other person as a result of that they had the stronger weapon, and that anything you do is then lawful as defense. But I'm not a lawyer. I'm not giving you advice. I'm only saying what I learned when I was there back in the 80s. It's probably changed, who knows. So I thought that was really interesting. So what was the movie? Raiders of the Lost Ark, where the guy brings a gun to a whip fight. Harrison Ford has the whip. Or it's whatever there is. I can't remember the movies anymore. And then he just shoots him. Right. Now, comic genius on the part of the Spielberg, but in reality, that is not the way it should go. Right. So if you use overwhelming force on someone who you could have subdued in another way, peacefully, maybe non-fatally, then that's on you, I'm afraid. I'm sorry about that, but that's the way it goes. Anywho, look, Meckie's only running late. Don't fear. Don't put your fingers in your ears and say la 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 la. Dave's doing the Pinchy and Zappy show again, yet again, like Krusty the Clown did from the emergency broadcasting bunker with a scorpion and a pair of tongs and a car battery. And he sang his version of the Itchy and Scratchy theme, but with, I think it's Pinchy and Stingy or something like that. That was very funny. Anyway, moving on. Thanks for being with us today and listening in. I wanted to say something immediately. I've just travelled interstate by car, and Mother Nature pulled out something out of her back pocket, which was high temperatures. And I discovered, as many of my friends have discovered, there's severe flaws in our technology. Our technology of cooling can only work within a certain window, for instance, right? So if you jump in your car and it's 30 degrees Celsius, you do the math on what it means for Fahrenheit, because, America is the only country in the world that still uses it. So, just saying. So you're driving along and, it's hot. I'm going to turn my air conditioning on. You turn the air conditioning on and it's good at 30 degrees. 32 degrees as the summer sun is beating down. That's still effective. Still cooling. And it gets to a point at around about 34 degrees where it's just no longer effective. I mean, it's trying. I'm not saying it doesn't work at all, but it tries. And the net result is, it's finished being able to beat the heat. And so it blows the the coolest air it can, but it's kind of starts to diminish in its cooling really rapidly per degree raise after about 34 degrees. And this was 38 degrees temperature that we were experiencing. And it was a dry heat, really little humidity. I think it was like 20% humidity or something like that. And we drove about 5 hours inland from the eastern coast of Australia, from the central coast, or basically Newcastle, and to a lovely town called Mendooran. And it really is nice. There isn't anything there but a pub, but it's nice, right? The biggest town is about an hour and a half away by car or something like that, and that's called Dubbo. And that's a very large town, and it has, supermarkets and fast food. But you don't find fast food anywhere between Newcastle and Mendooran. You only find a town with a bakery and a service station and maybe a newsagent if you're lucky in one town that you drive through. The rest, there's lucky to have a bakery, to be honest. Most have a pub. Most. And that's all. And that's what Mendooran has. It's basically on a T intersection between Mudgee and Coonabarabran. The road splits in two directions, north and south, and that's it. Anyway, it was quite hot. It was kind of bearable, but if you were at all not used to, 38 degrees, nearly 40, I forget the term. Let me have a quick squiz for you to let you know what 38 degrees Celsius is in Fahrenheit. Let me have a look. That's 100 degrees, 0.4 Fahrenheit. Like, it's hot. We've had 45 degrees in the past, but today it didn't get to that hot. I think the hottest I've experienced was 46 degrees. That's 113. Let me have a look at that. Step it up to 46. I think we got to maybe 48 or something like that. Yeah, that's 118. So I think we got up to there in the past in Sydney, and that was just absolutely awful, with really high humidity too. Not 100%. No, don't be silly, but rather 60 or 70% humidity, and that's the pits. There's no escaping it. So air conditioning is what my point was, and it is that there's only a certain amount of cooling you can achieve with an air conditioning unit, where it's using this ozone layer friendly they call it coolant. It's actually a gas, and when you spray it through a nozzle under pressure, the temperature difference from the pressure side to the non-pressure side is how it cools. And all you're really doing is pumping the heat away from one side out to a heat exchanger that empties it to the atmosphere, the heat as infrared, and then it goes back into the cycle of being compressed and then sprayed again to create a cool coolant. And that's it. You're only moving heat from one place to another. You're really not just cooling one side. You're taking the heat from the side that you wish to be cool and putting it out to where it's already hot, but you're trying to get rid of that heat. And it gets to a point where it's totally inefficient. It doesn't work at all. Now, I had a friend of mine that talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and that was just awful. But I could laugh and joke about it because I wasn't going through it. And today I went through it and found the inefficiencies in air conditioning. Now, if we hit 50 degrees, we're not cooling anything. There's no cooling anything. Once you know that 50 degrees Celsius is the very limit of the determined safe hot water systems maximum temperature in Australia by law. So you must not have a hot water service that can heat water past 50, because 50 degrees doesn't damage your skin. It's the most temperature you can have before damage occurs. And you'll pull your hand out of that 50 degree heated water because that's already hot. boiling is at 100 degrees Celsius, so it's halfway towards boiling. But if you go higher than that, which they're predicting we're going to be seeing temperatures up in the 55s in the future, and that's already death for people who are still exposed to that temperature somehow. There has to be a better way of cooling, and I'm still seeking that out. So having a fan dehydrates you in that kind of heat, and it only works if the air is not humid, because as you perspire, the evaporation on your skin actually cools you down as the wind blows over it. That's our design. That's what we do. We excrete liquid onto our skin surface, which does cool us down, thankfully. Without that, we would just cook eventually. So, yeah, let's move on. So, banks are the big story. On the temperature, I had a segue. The segue is that Sydney just broke a 165-year-old milestone after the hottest 4 consecutive days in the month of March, where it's supposed to be heading. The temperature is meant to be heading south and cooling, and it just didn't. So, yeah, and some parts of the country got to 40 degrees. We're lucky we didn't see that. So, 39 degrees at Richmond and Blacktown, which is kind of like a bit of a bowl, and that's Sydney's west, where there's very few trees. New housing estates have no trees. In fact, they don't have a roof with an eave that goes beyond the side of the building. Whereas houses that were built without air conditioning, they could have a 2 to 3 meter eave stretching out and shading the actual building itself from all parts of the sun's angles. Now, that's how they used to be done before we had mechanical air conditioning, and you opened up some of those doors and windows and you attempted to, you closed them during the hottest part and open it up when the temperature differential was cooler outside. So your house heated up slowly, but then you allowed the cool air then to replace that only at a certain time of day. Right now we're seeing the heat going all the way past sunset now for some reason. And look, is it the sun's activity? Good question. Is it the thickness of the atmosphere, or that there isn't anything restricting the sun's energy from hitting the ground? That was been my determination the whole time. Who knows? I haven't done the studies on it, but I'm still in that realm. Rather than a blanket of CO2 or other contributing gases in the atmosphere, because I haven't seen anything that suggests that the southern hemisphere where we live has any more carbon or methane or other contributing gases in the atmosphere to an extent that should increase the temperatures in March, for instance. There isn't anything there. So the only way to make the sun, if it never got hotter, heat up the Earth more would be to thin the atmosphere and allow more of that restrictive material to be gone. Clear the air, for instance. Weaken the magnetic field, allow more of that energy to get through. Look, I'm happy to have a conversation with someone who knows better. Anyway, moving on. So the banks is apart from being able to survive in temperature, the next thing I think is the most serious, which is the banks. So we saw SVB, Silicon Valley Bank have a real hard time. Did you know that there's 200 customers that are banks that are vulnerable to exactly the same thing that caused SVB to tumble? There's 200 other banks that are vulnerable to that same thing. Just letting you sink in for a minute. And there is also the tech companies that had money in there. And there's also something else. So I saw a story today which highlighted that China had a lot of investment in SVB, and that there's, I think, 2,000 companies that had that could very well be affected. Now, I think there was some money going out to the US insured deposits from US companies. If it's over a certain size of money, then you're insured, then that's certainly part of that scheme to relieve the stress. However, some of the companies they've been looking through the list are Chinese or CCP related companies. And there's a question now being raised in the US, which is, should those companies be paid any money? I don't know what the rules were around the insurance. I don't know what the rules. Hey, there's Meki. I don't know what the rules were like and written and how they were written that could protect some of the SVB customers. If you had insurance, then that's up to your insurer or the underwriter and how that's going to play out. But I dare say we've seen, yes, we are, Meki. So there are two other banks that also have had a kick-on effect. We've seen the stock markets have a really hard time, and stocks have plummeted again. But some really interesting stories are coming out about some other things that are going up. Like there was a sharp spike in crypto, short-lived, but I think people took money out of their bank, bought some crypto, and bought in, raised the price, like they bought in as a trickle buy-in, and then immediately sold, because I watched my money go up and then come back down again. I can't even trade out of my investments in crypto. Can't even trade out. It seems like the ones that I've purchased you can't get out of once you've got them. Or something. Oh, hideous. Yeah, it's not much fun. But let me have a look at my value. Oh, it's gone up a little bit overall. But in the last month, you can see the SVB spike, which everyone's calling it that these days. Hey, Meki, how are you in this lovely Sydney warmth? Hello? I can see you there, Meki. Hello? Nothing? Crickets? Okay. You don't look like you're muted or anything. Anyway, say hello when you can hear me. There you go. Meki? Hello? Oh, he's muted again. Anyway. Yeah, so, look, I mean, wasn't this 2008? Didn't we do all this in 2008 already? Didn't we learn? Apparently not. The information that there are 200 more banks that are at risk of exactly the same toxic recipe that tumbled SVB is an understatement. It's hideously underestimated. And most banks of the planet can't take a bank run. Are you with me, Meki? Hello? I can see you there. Anyway, I don't know what's going on with Meki. He's joined the call, but now he appears to be muted. Maybe he's still trying to work out his audio or something. That could be it. So the concern is, of course, and has always been, bank runs are bad. I'm at home, Becky. Anyway, he asked me where am I? I'm okay. So your Skype settings. Because I'm sure people have been interacting with me online. Hang on, let me see. I'm just going to check my settings. Because it appears as though it's working everywhere else. Hang on. Microphone. Yeti. Oh, there you go. I suppose you can hear me now. It's funny because the recording of this show has been recording just fine. So if you have missed me, catch the YouTube. Anyway, there you go, Mackie. I'm sure you
Hey, there you are. What happened? There was dead air.
Well, it's dead air to you, right? The recording worked just fine. It was.
No, I'm listening to Revolution Radio.
I get it. I get it. Oh. I've adjusted my settings, so it appears as though every once in a while, my darn Skype decides that it's going to associate with a different audio input. That's what it does. And it just completely kills me. So, I mean, I can't see it doesn't put a line around my avatar in Skype, but I can see it on the recording. So the recording showed it working fine. I just assumed it was working fine. So apologies, everybody. And thank you, Billy Bad. BBA. So, look, there's a recording of this on YouTube, and I'll put the link on inside the chat, and you can listen to the beginning if you wish, albeit delayed. That's probably the one. All right, now, so the 200 banks around America, I suppose, pretty much the world, all the banks are all susceptible to a bank run. There's companies all over the place which are have investments in SVB which are getting bailed out. There's now a question about should they bail out ones that might very well be a nation state, because they could be protected themselves, I suppose. I don't know. Look, the question is, if you're insured and you've got your deposit insured, then whatever the terms and conditions of that deposit insurance, you should get. You just turn to that to find out what's going on. I'm not going to enter into should we or shouldn't we pay any particular owner of the money. It's not up to me. Just a commentator.
Well,
so, Becky,
the thing is this.
Yeah, go ahead.
The thing is this, though, right? Okay, so yes, there's bank insurance. Yes, there's government guarantees, up to a point.
Yes. Up
to a point. No, we know how to pronounce it. We're just not sure if we can say your name, Billy, on the air or not. Right? So
that's right.
I think it's borderline. And in fact, it's sort of an Armenian take on that particular name, right?
Yeah.
I like it. No, look, the issue is that right now there's, but I think 3 or 4 banks in trouble, right? From memory.
Yeah.
2 are gone. Credit Suisse is not looking good, and I think there might be another one, maybe another couple. The problem is the element of distrust it instills in the general population as far as the banking sector is concerned, right? If there is a bank run, right, on all the banks, and this would be worse if that were to happen, there is not enough money in the world to pay everybody out.
No, that's
right. It doesn't exist.
That's right.
Okay? You can't. If you're going to the bank asking for cash, right, if you're among the first 5,000. Good luck. You should be okay, but the problem truly is there's not enough money physically in existence to pay everybody out. So because the theory is that everybody will just keep the money in the bank. Right? That's the theory. Now, insurance, yes, to a point, but we're not quite in the virtual currency sector yet. We're not quite there yet. So which means we still have this desire and even a right to have cash. As this goes on, and this is, again, I'm sure Dave already spoke about this. This is about the interest rate rises. This is what caused this, right? The bank, SVB, was all of a sudden exposed to the tune of $2-something billion, because the higher interest rates had led to a decrease in its profit margins when selling certain assets.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what happened. And in order to well, shore themselves up against it, they were looking to raise that $2 billion, which of course people got wind of and panicked and took their money out and pretty much collapsed the bank. And then the regulator stepped in and said, yeah, this bank is done. But if you weren't fast enough to get your money out, then if you're an American citizen, up to $250,000 we'll guarantee for you. But if you're a foreigner or you had more than $250,000 in that particular bank, well, that's just too bad.
It's a bit of a bail-in, isn't it? When they take your
bail-in,
money.
right? Yeah. And now what we're seeing is that UBS is it's a Swiss bank as well.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking to I guess buy out more or less Credit Suisse by Monday.
Yes.
They're talking now, but are they going to get there? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so Credit Suisse is in trouble, and they're trying to send money to Credit Suisse to save it in billions.
No, they need, how much money do they need? Okay, but here we go. 54 billion. 50. No. So let me tell you the whole story. So the 54 billion I just mentioned, which was a lifeline, $54 billion, which was a lifeline from the Swiss National Bank.
Yep.
Swish bank.
That's the sound that your money disappears in.
That's right. Followed by a burping sound in the burglar. It has not resolved the issue. So the $54 billion that the Swiss National Bank has given to Credit Suisse was not enough.
Oh boy.
Okay, not enough.
I saw another bank had donated $5 billion, right?
Yeah.
And it's this trying to save them from collapsing too, because the chain of events that would happen if Swiss went down would be even more disastrous. So if you say you had 200 billion locked up in it, and you only needed to send 5 to save it, you'd probably do that.
Yeah. And funnily enough, in order to sort of help here, they're just about to fire 9,000 people of a staff of about 50,000 globally. So 9,000, which is what's it, 20%? So they're getting rid of 20% of their staff. Now, is it going to be enough? We don't know. And the problem really is the reason this is actually like just before World War One. Now, World War One, there were a lot of secret treaties, and nobody really knew who was in bed with who. Nobody knew. We didn't know. No, I don't know. Who's got a treaty with who? We don't know. But once war was declared, right? The Austrians declaring war on the Serbians, as it were. All of a sudden, everybody came in because they had secret treaties, right? Boom, 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 boom. Oh, no, you declare. Oh, I'm with you, and I'm with you, and I'm with you, and all of a sudden, we're all at war. Awesome. Now this is similar. All these banks have all these deals with a whole bunch of other banks. They're buying their financial instruments, which are really just bonds or I guess products packaged up, mortgages or other things that can be packaged up and then sold on. Anything that can generate a profit, really. So it could be shares in companies they're packaged up together. I mean, it depends, right? It depends. But it's a whole bunch of stuff that is packaged up together, which is then sold on, and they're called financial instruments, which is a hilarious thing. And they try to make it sound really complicated. It isn't really, not the principle of it. They make it complicated, though, because the more complicated, the less likely you are to understand what's actually in it. And you have to rely on the ratings by someone like Moody's or someone to, because they are meant to know just how good those products really are. And of course, in 2008, as we know very well, Dave, they weren't very good at all.
I think they were looking out the side window.
They were dog doo-doo. That's right.
That's right.
So the problem here is that now the rising interest rate, what it has done, it has cut into banks' profits. Because they also have to borrow money, and some of those, so they had to pay more interest on some of the things that they owned as well, which cut into their profits. And depending on what it is they had, depending on mortgages or who knows what, right? This caused a fairly significant loss. Certainly in the case of SVB.
Cross-country investments where the exchange rate is also a variant.
Yeah, completely. 100%. You're right.
So you start to combine all this stuff together, and what's happening?
Yeah. So now the sensible thing here would be, maybe these interest rate rises aren't all that good. Maybe because we talked about the banking sector collapsing, is what they say, or do they? Right? And what we are left with is a situation where, yes, okay, interest rate rises could be on hold. We still haven't addressed the root cause of the issue for inflation, which is the volume of money in the economy in relation to goods and services that it can purchase.
Mm-hmm.
No one has addressed that. And in Australia, in fact, because we had such a strong job growth market, Dave, they said, we'll keep raising interest rates, because our jobs are growing. Now, which of course is a complete nonsense, because
did you know
I can only talk about Australia.
Jobs are not a consideration for the economy.
Well, the theory is
for determining whether they should put them up or not. It just sounded like an arbitrary thing that they threw in at last minute.
Yeah. What they're saying is, which I think is a nonsense, because I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
They're saying because there are more jobs, that means more people are spending money. Now, in truth, job growth doesn't tell you what kind of jobs they are.
That's right.
So they could be part-time jobs. They could be contract jobs. They could be low-paying jobs. We don't know. This is just more jobs. Here they are. I mean, and not only that, just because you have those jobs doesn't mean you're going to fill them. You may not have the skill in country, or you may not. People might not want to do that job. Oh, here's a job at the zoo. You can be an elephant doo-doo shoveler. Yes, no, I don't think I want that one.
An elephant proctologist, Mackie, that's
that'll do it. But it was enough for our central bank to say, oh, no, we probably will raise them because, there's more jobs now. See, it's a complete, I think now it's not a complete lack of understanding. I think it's just, it's what's the best word? It's obscene disregard for what they know. Okay. And they want to bring about a certain outcome here, okay? And the outcome is, because if you have money now, if you don't owe anybody any money, and you got money in the bank and you got assets, it doesn't matter if there's a financial crisis, doesn't matter if there's a depression, completely irrelevant, right? If you don't owe anybody anything and you have a steady income, it might take a hit. You might, lose some of your income. But let's say you got assets and you got cash in the bank and all those wonderful things, right? Maybe even different currencies. None of this is going to touch you.
Yep.
None of it. You don't care. My father, when we came to Australia 30-something years ago, he bought, houses were cheap then, relatively speaking. He bought our house cash. He bought his car cash because he had to bring a lot of money in to migrate from Germany to Australia. He had to come as a business. So he migrated his business and he had to bring a certain amount of cash. The government said, so you have to bring this cash. So my father never had a mortgage. He never had mortgage stress. And back then it was like 14, 15% interest rates, right? He didn't care. He didn't care at all. I mean, anyone but my father would have taken advantage of the situation and bought a whole bunch of property, right? But he didn't. So, it's not there. Point is, people that are in a situation like that, but they don't really care what the interest rates are, to be honest, unless, they put their money in the bank and they get a nice return. They won't be touched by this. And everybody who makes a decision on this, is in a situation where it doesn't affect them. None. Zero.
Yeah.
Okay? Because they're the money people. They have cash. They're fine. In case you're worried, they're going to be okay. Don't worry about it. They're going to be just fine, Dave. Right?
Well, I was initially worried. Okay. I was worried a little.
I know you're worried. You don't have to be.
No, I realized my mistake. So, the bank run... Every bank is susceptible to a bank run because there isn't enough. There's not enough cash in a bank. But Mackie, this is what I'm thinking here, right? This dangerous time. This is our second lesson about how susceptible banks are to anything. Doesn't matter anymore, I suppose. Why don't we just go a digital currency?
Hey!
Fix all
in fact, BB and Your Honor and Flippy are talking about that in the chat room, and they're absolutely correct. And you're right, Dave. You're 100% correct.
Because that is absolutely what they've got sitting in their back pocket ready to use. Here is the big solution.
Yep.
Because then,
Yeah, it is.
what does it matter to anyone anymore if we had a digital, like sovereign digital currencies or a global digital currency? But do you know what? There's a competing digital currency market currently going on, which isn't crypto, just sovereign digital. And that's BRICS. So it's a partnership of countries who have agreed to pay the host country in its sovereign digital currency by signing up to it. It's an agreement. Now, I always predicted that the first in would then have, and the result would be others would go in to a sovereign digital, and then you would be competing against who is going to rule the world with their method of digital currency.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think is going to happen. I think it's going to happen sooner. I know that 18 months ago, I think Australia decided they were going to mess around or play around with digital currency themselves as the Federal Reserve, and then see what happened as a result. Whether or not we got there or not, that's still to be determined. And because they haven't released that to us yet. No doubt in our highest take-up of tap payment system in the world, and earlier than everybody else, we were the highest per capita user of what's it called? NFC, right? Near field contact payment.
Oh, non-fungible NFTs and non-fungible tokens. Talk about that?
Don't
even get me started on that stuff, mate.
No, I'm talking about tap technology. So whether your phone or your card, your credit card.
Let's not go to the fungibles, man.
No, I'm not going to the fungibles. I don't wish to ever talk about the fungibles, unless, of course, I was trying to invisibly earn money on the quiet by selling NFTs online and overpricing them, so funding people or donors could just buy those from me rather than donate money directly to me. Yeah. So they purchase it. That's not donation, is it? No, that's a purchase. Great. Excellent. I got something from that. What did you get? I got I don't know, it's 12 by 12 icon. How much did that cost you? I don't know how much. Oh, $250,000. Yeah. Well worth it, that. Right?
Yes.
Those 144 pixels are really important to me now. I treasure it.
Image of a bridge you might want to buy.
Yeah, wow. That looks really good. I might buy one of those. So anyway, the digital currency itself, there'll be a war about who's going to have the world global currency in digital. And I think it's the adoption of all of our local sovereign currencies, which is going to be the push for the greater one. And I think that the solution to all the bank problems is just going digital. Because if there's no money to have to give to anyone, who cares? Bank runs disappear. There isn't a bank run anymore. Because the bank run is defined by you going to the bank and saying, give me your cash to the extent or equaled amount of my deposit. I'm going to take all my money out in cash, please. But there isn't enough cash to pay people out. And certainly not enough to pay all of their depositors. So, digital currency, where would you like me to deposit that money? And they go, into this bank. They go, yeah, cool. That's done now.
Yeah, this would solve the issue. You're 100% correct. Which is, of course, a huge... See, at that point, I don't even know... Actually, there would be nothing. Nothing would be stopping inflation anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I don't think. Once we get there. Because what would you do? How would you do it? How could you possibly stop it? Especially now that you've given complete control. I mean, they already have control, but now you've given complete and, in fact, unauditable control to the money people.
Uh-huh.
I can just create as much money as I want. I no longer have to, in fact, I don't have the government to come to me and ask me to print money. I'll just do that all myself. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll just type some zeros in. It's all good, right?
Yeah, and you know what I found? This is really interesting, and you have to understand this. Everybody needs to understand this because this is really critical to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, I watched this report on the clubs in New South Wales.
Yes.
And the power these clubs have. Now, this is an important, and I will explain to you why it's important.
And it's Clubs New South Wales.
Yes, yeah. Now they're
body.
massively powerful. Now,
which I love, so by the way. I love them, Mickey. Just going to say that straight away.
But they're so powerful that members of parliament and prime ministers and premiers will change their policies that they fought for if the clubs don't like them. Like, for example, introducing a tax on gambling or introducing cashless gambling or whatever. Whatever it might be, right? Because we're talking billions and billions and billions of dollars. There's corruption, there's money laundering, there's a whole bunch of stuff. However, the point I'm making here is that's Clubs Australia. They're powerful enough to get governments and individuals to change their mind. Not only that, they can get ministers fired.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? If a minister doesn't toe the line, bye-bye. Now, that's Clubs New South Wales.
That's right.
Now, the banks, infinitely more powerful, especially the central banks.
Yeah.
Okay, this is where we draw the parallel, the comparison here. Do you really think that they're not a lot more powerful than Clubs New South Wales? Yes, I think they are. And if they are, then just think about how much more pressure they can exert and how much more. So they wouldn't just have someone get fired. They might have a skiing accident, or the helicopter might crash, or something might happen to them, right? Just to be clear, that's the level of power and, I guess, complete lack of oversight we're talking about here.
One of Australia's YouTubers' house was set ablaze in an attempt to take his life. Apparently, don't know. It's allegedly. However, no culprit has been found. But if you look for Friendly Geordie's YouTube channel, you'll find a video that he's put out himself, in which he describes a bunch of people that he's upset recently on his channel. And there's recently, yeah, that's right. And there is it's a list of very prominent either people or organizations. And he's upset a lot of people with his reporting. But his reporting on things that were abandoned by the mainstream media. So it's very interesting that he did the research and found a whole bunch of very, very interesting things. And I suggest you go and have a look. And that's the end of that conversation.
What conversation? I'm sorry.
What conversation?
I missed that completely, Dave.
I couldn't hear myself.
Static. What? But to be clear, they push toward this digital currency, right? And it was really, and crypto really sort of threw a spanner in the works here, because that's exactly what the banks wanted, except they wanted to control it. So yes, we want crypto, but we don't want a free crypto. That's not good. We don't free range crypto. No one wants this. No one needs that. And all the banks that have failed so far this time around, they're all very strong in the crypto market, funnily enough. There was the big crypto exchange recently closed down. Another one was indicted for fraud. There's a whole bunch of stuff happening with crypto there, right? So that's an active program that the banks are running to get crypto out of the world, which they can't, of course, but they can certainly sour it for the average Joe. And then wait a year or two, maybe less, and hey, here's the banks. It's not called crypto. We'll call this digital currency.
That's right.
It's your local bank's digital currency. Digital. Same as crypto. Okay. Exactly the same, in fact, but better because it's from your bank. Thank you very much.
So the idea of having a cryptocurrency or a digital currency actually backed by something as what you might call a stable coin, as being a sovereign currency, is it's unique in the crypto world, and I wish them all the best with that. Remember, it's only as good It's only his. I think he makes his own memes. You do make your own memes, don't you? Money can be exchanged for goods and services. But the thing, Meki, once you've got a digital currency, you've got the ability to limit the length of time that it exists. Do you remember during our pandemic, we had the New South Wales government handing out vouchers of $75 with an expiration date attached to them? So please visit the countryside. Go and eat in restaurants. So we had two different ones. One was an entertainment one. You could go to the movies even if you wanted to.
Yes. Yeah.
Or you could go and stay in a hotel in regional Australia. And you could spend this voucher. Now, but the voucher had an expiry date of 3 months or whatever it was. So they wanted you to spend the money now and not save it. So imagine if you were paid in a currency that actually had a portion of that amount that you've been given as payment will expire.
Yeah.
So you're forced to go and spend it somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And digital currency easily done, right?
Totally doable.
Mm.
Remember, the mechanisms have already been trialed.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the infrastructure is still in place where you can redeem these vouchers. You and I know that when you introduce something, it doesn't go away. It's like taxes.
No.
We're going to put a new tax in. When have you heard about the declaration of a tax that's being removed? I'll wait for you.
Yeah, we'll just not pay taxes anymore.
Excise, levies, fees, you name it. They're all still there.
The opposite is always true. Oh, no new taxes. Or, we're not going to touch super. Or, the Harbour Bridge is going to be free until the end of time.
And then they suddenly put another toll on it.
Whoops.
Yeah, good on you.
There? Easy money, right?
Yeah.
Look,
so 2 minutes.
Governments are the most criminal record that we've come up with so far. It doesn't matter if they're elected or not. Because the thing is this, you have to understand this whole thing is it's a racket, and they're all in it. Very, very few outsiders ever get into the racket. So if you go into politics, you usually do it from a fairly young age as a staffer or something like that. Or, so you're indoctrinated from a young age, usually by joining a party. Not that you have to, but usually that's how it goes. Very rarely, and Trump is the exception. Trump is one that had no, previous affiliations with the power structures in Washington, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why they hate him so much.
Oh yeah.
Now, I'm not saying he's a great guy, and I don't think his policies are all that wonderful for the world. They're great for America, actually, believe me or not. I mean, they really are good for America, but not for the rest of the world. But that's why they want him out, because he doesn't have that understanding, the pork barreling and the trough mentality. No, he doesn't.
I nearly choked.
Yeah.
The music will start any second.
Music here. Okay, look, we'll talk to you later.
This is David Meki, Shiny Set Out. We'll be back after the short break with our show topic, the Third Reich.